Die große Zeit ist jetzt angebrochen. Deutschland ist nun erwacht. Die Macht haben wir nun in Deutschland gewonnen. Nun gilt es, das deutsche Volk zu gewinnen.
Adolf Hitler initiated the barrier of censorship during their reign as Chancellor of Germany, but Hans and Sophie Scholl put their lives on the line to form a resistance group called the White Rose to dismantle the censorship ban. The White Rose broke Hitler's restrictions by spreading 6 leaflets throughout their university and around Munich, repelling the Third Reich. Though their ending was tragic, they led the way to the formation of many resistance groups, who were able to break Adolf Hitler's barriers. The group began in 1942 as University of Munich students getting together to simply discuss poetry. The most notable members of the White Rose were Hans Scholl and his sister Sophie, Christoph Probst, Alexander Schmorell, Willy Graf, and Kurt Huber. Hans Scholl enlisted in the army where he served on the Eastern Front. While there, he witnessed abuse to Jewish laborers, and also heard many rumors of Jews being executed throughout Europe. This did not sit well with him, and he told many about his experience. In May 1942, Hans showed the group a different type of poem, one speaking of a tyrant. Mounting the rubbish heap around him, he spews his message on the world. The group could not identify the author, and they came up with many theories. Christoph Probst believed those verses couldn't be more timely. They might have been written yesterday. The other members agreed. After that, the meetings tended to get more political and less poetry related. Over time, more members joined, and each of them had either been a part of the Hitler Youth or the Union of German Girls. These programs were created in a sense to brainwash the children, burning Nazi ideologies into their head. At first, they participated enthusiastically in these groups, but slowly, these children became more and more disillusioned with Nazism. The White Rose began to attend sermons and classes with a German professor, Kurt Huber. His lectures always oozed out criticisms of the regime, and as Hans said, though his hair was turning gray, he is one of us. A White Rose member, Jürgen Whitman, wrote that it was not good enough to keep to oneself, one's beliefs and ethical standards. The time had come to act. So the group did. They began with writing the first leaflet in June of 1942. They used a manual printing press and wrote texts that encouraged readers to resist the Nazis. The group wrote in forms of poetry and historical references. They were single-spaced, double-sided, replicated, folded into envelopes, and mailed all throughout Munich. Nothing is so unworthy of a civilized nation as allowing itself to be governed without opposition by an irresponsible clique that has yielded to base instinct. Most of the leaflets went out to academics, civil servants, and restaurateurs. The White Rose members anonymously spread them across the University of Munich as well, bringing suspicion that the authors were university students. Do not forget that every nation deserves the government that it endures. The second leaflet was sent out in the 3rd week of June and spoke of how Jews were being treated by the Nazis in Eastern Europe. Since the conquest of Poland, 300,000 Jews have been murdered in this country in the most bestial way. The third leaflet, sent out in July, told the German people of the goal of the White Rose, which was to bring down the Nazi government. We want to try and show them that everyone is in a position to contribute to the overthrow of the system. It can be done only by the cooperation of many convinced, energetic people who are agreed as to the means they must use. The fourth leaflet, sent at the end of July, appealing more to Lutherans, used Bible verses instead of quoting poems. There is an old proverb that children are always taught anew: pay attention or pay the consequences. A smart child will only burn his fingers once on a hot stove. At this point, they began traveling to nearby cities and left leaflets in phone booths. Wherefore, I praise the dead which are already dead more than the living which are yet alive. Ecclesiastes 4:2. For the next 6 months, 3 of their members served once again at the Russian front: Hans, Willy Graf, and Alexander Schmorell. While they were serving, the activities of the White Rose ceased. After the 6-month silence, the 5th leaflet was distributed in January of 1943 with a new strategy. Instead of poetry and biblical references, they instead demonstrated maturity and developed a far more powerful message by looking past the end of the war and dreaming for a new Europe. And what is the German nation doing? It sees nothing, it hears nothing. It is blindly following its seducers to destruction. This leaflet was titled Call to All Germans and was distributed widely. Leaflets appeared in Saarbrücken, Stuttgart, Cologne, Vienna, Freiburg, Chemnitz, Hamburg, Innsbruck, and Berlin. In this leaflet, the group's name was changed from the White Rose to German Resistance Movement. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the protection of the individual citizen from the caprice of criminal, violent states. These are the bases of the new Europe. At the end of January, they produced their sixth and ultimately final leaflet. The day of reckoning has come, the reckoning of our German youth with the most abominable tyranny that our nation has ever endured. This leaflet was produced by Professor Kurt Huber. The tone of this writing was more patriotic. This is a battle that we all must fight for our future, our freedom and honor in a political system that is conscious of its moral responsibility. On February 3rd, 8th, and 13th, Hans, Willy, and Alexander went out on the streets and graffitied walls with sayings such as "Freedom" and "Hitler the Mass Murderer." Allied planes dropped tens of thousands of white rose leaflets over Nazi Germany, and they even reached concentration camps. Our nation is awakening against the enslavement of Europe by National Socialism and a new pious revival of freedom and honor. When Hans and Sophie were distributing these leaflets at the University of Munich, they threw them off the balcony, but they were caught by the university maintenance man Jacob Schmid, who was a member of the Nazi Party. He reported them to the Gestapo.
Did this in a moment of joy, and it's called in German Übermut, that frivolous act, and not thinking of the consequences. I have no other explanation. It was probably the most foolish thing they did.
Both Hans and Sophie were arrested. During their investigation, the Gestapo discovered that Christoph Probst was involved, and the three of them were imprisoned. The Gestapo searched the three of them and found a draft of the seventh leaflet written by Christoph. Now the blood of 200,000 soldiers who were doomed to death accuses the murderer named Hitler. The leaflet was never published, but it sealed their fate. Hitler and his regime must fall so that Germany may live. Make up your minds, Stalingrad and destruction, or Tripoli and a future of hope. And when you have decided, act. The Gestapo matched the handwriting to another letter in their house. At the beginning of the investigation, the three were denying all involvement with the White Rose, but after a few days passed, the three of them finally confessed, in an attempt to save the other members. On February 22, 1943, the three were tried before Ronald Freisler, known to Germans as the hanging judge. Hans and Sophie's parents tried to attend the trial, but were not allowed in the courtroom. Their mother told a guard, "I'm the mother of two of the accused," to which the guard responded, "You should have brought them up better." After this, Judge Ronald Freisler ordered the Scholl family out of court. Hans Scholl, Sophie Scholl, and Christoph Probst were convicted of high treason, and the verdict stated, propagated defeatist thinking and vilified the Führer, meaning they spread negative thoughts and writings in order to denounce Hitler. When Sophie had a chance to see her parents just before the execution, she expressed to them how satisfied she and Hans were that they had betrayed no one and took personal responsibility for the actions of the White Rose. Sophie's cellmate Elsa Goebbels recorded Sophie's last words before her execution. "How can we expect righteousness to prevail when there is hardly anyone willing to give himself up individually to a righteous cause? It is such a splendid, sunny day, and I have to go. But how many have to die on the battlefield in these days? How many young, promising lives? What does my death matter if by our acts thousands are warned and alerted? Among the student body, there will certainly be a revolt." Hans Scholl, Sophie Scholl, and Christoph Probst were the first of the White Rose to be executed. But as their fourth leaflet stated, "We will not be silent. We are your bad conscience. The White Rose will not leave you in peace." They were able to change the minds of German citizens who formed additional resistance groups, which ultimately obliterated Hitler's censorship barriers in 1945. They may have lost their lives, but the White Rose continued, and their impact was historically everlasting. Es lebe die Freiheit!